flick?
Yes.
Yes.
I've been delighted to be invited to speak here today. Am I echoing?
You're good.
Yeah? Awesome. So we all know someone experiencing housing instability. We all know the impacts that has more broadly on their life. In family situations, children are suffering with housing instability because they've got lower literacy and numeracy rates. The impacts of our housing disaster is multi-generational. There's broader societal impacts as well, lower productivity and therefore lower tax generation as a consequence as well. Yesterday morning, Shomabel Iqua was interviewed on the radio, on the breakfast program. He talked about how housing instability is displacing individuals from major cities where they can't afford to live anymore. This then means that they move to rural and regional areas and they're putting increasing pressure on those environments and locations, in particular causing increases of housing prices in most places. So the current housing disaster impacts everyone. So I personally have been touched by housing instability. I have 20 years experience as a trapped renter.
That one?
Next one.
Next one?
So 20 years ago, I had the great fortune of spending some time in Amsterdam, and I saw firsthand exactly how different it is possible to live and how much of an impact this has on how it changes our communities and our environment, and also what these people can contribute back to society as well. So that spurred me to go get a property development degree, and I've also joined the Housing Innovation Society, which promotes innovation in collective housing in particular. And I had the great fortune of recently doing a piece of work, which I'll go into in more detail shortly. So yeah, I'll touch on what I did at Panuku, the specific piece of work that's relevant to achieving forever affordability in housing. A bit about which audience we're talking about when we talk about this kind of housing. An application to a real life family and what it would mean for them financially to have this form of housing as an option. How it works in terms of the security of tenure, and a little bit about the next steps as well. So for those of you that don't know, Panuku is the property development and management arm of Auckland Council. It's a council-controlled organisation. It regenerates parts of Auckland, so key locations and town centres. And it says on its website, point to note, that it's continuously reviewing what it is to generate new income. I think that's a really important point to raise, because there's other important things that councils need to do too, right? So the case study in particular had a strategic direction set from Auckland to 2050, the key guiding document for the organisation and all its CCOs, which specifically has a direction to shift to a housing system that ensures secure and affordable homes for all. So there's a trickle down of policy documents that flow from that, and this is what inspired this project to be kicked off in the first place. So I led an internal team that include planners, urban designers. We had a placemaker and also members of the executive from the strategy and design divisions. We had a great consultancy team led by the Urban Advisory. We had international experts brought in, and we also drew on the resources and expertise of an Auckland-based developer. So this is not the best image, so I'll just talk to it. The housing that this is designed for, if this is a scale of like high income and that's lower income, we're talking about those who are working poor, our key essential workers, possibly where single parents and families where we may have only one income per household. So yeah, like I said, they're working poor. And these individuals particularly are unable to get a mortgage. They can't either save enough because they're not earning enough, or they're not considered to be able to service a mortgage. So I won't go into too much detail about the specific built form, other than to say the locations that were looked at for this development to be considered. A number of locations were chosen or were considered, and the One that was chosen had infrastructure investment occurring around it through other developments that were being delivered, and it also had no height restrictions. So we're obviously in the middle ring Auckland suburb where we want dense outcomes, and honestly not seeing density done well. So this was, I should come back to say that this, a key direction for the project was that it would be delivering quality affordable housing, it would deliver sustainability, it would show and demonstrate leadership, and it also would be replicable and scalable. So that's really important in an urban setting when we're trying to solve the housing disaster. So this is a bit about the built form, which I don't want to get into too much detail, other than to go into a little bit about collective housing. So coming back to the society, we support collective housing, and that has a common principles where we have a communal way of making decisions and are actively involved in solving housing needs. We design in a way of making sure that we have chance encounters, so that then builds relationships, which builds community, which builds a sense of belonging, and that consequently gives us civic pride. So you can see how a development like this is a catalyst type of development. So here's our family, and there's lots to say that I could go into detail, but what I will say here, for a family that are average combined household income of around 125,000 or more, young children, around 125,000, their options for this type of development will give them a home of roughly $30 to $35 less in the outset. This is roughly a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom. And this is drawing on 2019 figures as well for this development. In comparison, that's $30 less than the open rental market. In 10 years' time, because how we achieve forever affordability, that takes us to roughly a $300 difference, where it's cheaper to live in this type of development. So the key ways that this is done is to use structures that are, have benefits that traditional markets can't provide. So we're looking at a land trust, community land trust. So we all know how trusts work. They often secure assets. So it works in the same way, but we have here a form of community-led type of trust, and it also works in a not-for-profit type of way. So on top of that, we have a cooperative that would coordinate and manage the development on top. Cooperative is also quite common and understood. We have, they first started in the agricultural sector in New Zealand in the 1870s. So we have occupants would be shareholders, and that when occupants move in and out, so would their share as well. So this is a diagram that attempts to demonstrate how this would work. It's not exactly replicable to the project in question, but it shows how communities on top, so the cooperatives on top for the built form, and the cooperative, I suppose, gets rent from the occupants of the building, and that then is used to repay the cost to build the development. It's used to pay a ground rent. So in this example, land would have transferred from the council into the trust, and then the council would be paid an ongoing ground rent. In this example, we're looking at maybe half the market rate because of the social outcomes that it would provide. And the third part of the way that it would levy funds would pay for the ongoing maintenance costs of the building. So you can see we have an active participation and involvement, and that, like I said before, generates belonging and civic pride because they're actively involved in making their own home as best it can be. Cool. So where to from here? Naturally, I'm passionate and committed to make this happen. We need to collectively gather groundbreaking leaders to develop a partnership between agencies. Key skills and contributions would need to be governance, development industry expertise, and obviously those from the community would be vital as well. We would need to look at taking measured and calculated risk in a shared type of structure and way, and also pool resources and obviously celebrate the rewards. So So the next steps are to pull together innovative, creative and solution-orientated individuals and organisations that want to make a change for social benefit. So just a quick recap, the forever affordability part is enabled through removing profit from the developer. It's enabled through the way that we have a land is not necessarily purchased per se, it's actually leased. And the other way that it's built in is that through different occupants, as I mentioned with the cooperative, we have the share that comes in and out. So we're not seeing the capital gain that occurs in the open property market, which makes housing predominantly unaffordable. And I also try to describe this type of housing as somewhere between renting and owning, where you have more security than you would if you were a tenant, and you have some of the responsibilities a little bit if you're an owner. But it gives you the security without the financial outlay that you would need if you were trying to buy your own home. So, now I'm here. And I just wanted to end on that a secure home, a secure place to live is life-changing.
Thank you very much indeed, Imogen. So Imogen's been part of a piece of work that was done by around 50 different housing people across the country called How We Live. You can download this from howwelive.co.nz, and it talks about some of these barriers that are on the screen at the moment, and also about how that affects all of the other areas: health, education, income, well-being, and some of the solutions to solving those problems are these cooperative solutions, which, by the way, then encourage participation and democracy. Handy, hey! Does anybody have any questions for Imogen now? From the audience, hello. Go, Alex. Prime question answerer.
Kia ora, that was really refreshing, and I'm super stoked that you're taking examples from overseas and bringing them to New Zealand, because it's often a challenge that we sometimes, for some reason, to think of the own solutions ourselves. Do you have any idea of how many properties in Europe or in Copenhagen or wherever you've spent your time actually exist of this type? Is there 1 million people globally living in these properties, or the structure, or what does that look like?
So there's over 680 cooperatives in the UK, and there's at least 800 community land trusts. So that diagram I showed that is a hybrid of the two to get the best outcomes of both worlds. That was from 2012. There's something like, I think, 70,000 homes that are currently being built. There's another couple hundred that are in the pipeline. The UK, I should also say that I've lived in a housing cooperative, and I know firsthand some of the challenges it has. It's not for everyone, but there's a number of ways that we can work towards resolving those. For example, cooperatives are known to be best to work from the 20 to 40 households kind of figure. The example that I didn't get into too detail of the built form would have been 24 households. But yeah, so the combinations of both, the Community Land Trust was born out of the US. There's lots of those as well, but I haven't got the exact figures. But there's definitely, tried and true examples where it's worked elsewhere for sure.
A bit closer to home, there's over 1 million people in Australia living in cooperatives right now. It's part of their legislative framework. There's no reason why we shouldn't do it here. It's just been literally building run by property developers rather than for the benefit of all of the people. 38% of Zurich is in cooperative developments. 38% of their population lives in cooperatives. So yeah, it's all over the world and it's prevalent, and there's no reason why we shouldn't have it here. Does anybody have any other questions?
So how do we go the psychological problem of 25-year-olds saying, I want a quarter acre section in New Zealand with 2 bedrooms and I want it for $500,000?
How many 25-year-olds have you asked that question?
Exactly.
I'll put it this way, okay, this was 5 years ago. I remember two 25-year-olds who were cohabitating together, not even married, trying to buy my friend's house on the side of Mount Eden. And it went, and they complained on the press that basically it went for $250,000 over CV. How do we get past that?
We provide them with other options so that it's not the only option. Sorry, Imogen.
I was going to say that limited time, and also I suppose some of the visuals are not the best, but one of the things I would, we often show a diagram of the housing ecosystem, and we talk about the options that are currently available in the housing system in New Zealand. And we don't see really cooperatives, we don't see community land trusts, and they fall in the middle, like I said before, between those individuals, which are a growing number, particularly if you live in Auckland, right? Was it 11% house price increase in the last year? Like the chances of ever catching up are, minuscule, if not limited. And the experiences you have as a trap renter, with housing instability, has a bunch of other consequences. So we talk about increasing options in the housing ecosystem, which makes it a much healthier environment because we get more diversity.
I'm going to give this thing another plug as well, sorry, because this talks about exactly what those other options are. And the ambition and the aim of this group is to turn this into a national campaign so that those other options become known to the 25-year-olds. They're already known to my 13 and 18-year-old because they live with it, but not the general public.
So come check out the book later.
So just a comment around some of the iwi developments that are occurring in this space, because Alistair mentioned earlier that some of the wicked problems we're talking about are intergenerational in nature, and so for Māori we think about our mokopuna as mokopuna. We're always thinking several generations ahead. So I can share two examples that might resonate with us here. One is Kārearea, which is in Hamilton, and so that's a mixed model approach to community housing. I'll make some notes. It's using Habitat for Humanity, so that provides a rent-to-own model for those that are in the Habitat homes. It's using iwi funding, and some of the iwi funding is for kaumātua, so for our elderly housing. It's also a special housing zone, and so that includes some of the social housing that we're starting to hear more about in New Zealand. And then there are also some private-public partnerships involved as well. So there's an example, a small one, of actually doing it without actually having to look overseas. And the second one I'll give is in relation to Pohara Marae, which is near Karapiro, if people know where Maunga Marae is. And that's Ngāti Kahukura Koropi, and so they have been able to, through their tribe, fund the purchase of a neighbouring farm and build a papapaina. So we see multi-generational living. Very small scale into what Imogen's sharing here, but I think it gives us some working examples of what's possible. Kia ora.
Thank you, Vanessa. That's awesome to have those examples closer to home. Okay, we're going to hear from Imogen again later on the panel. Will you please say thank you?